Yo, what's up, guys? This is Why Not Be Reckless, aka Why Not Be Casting. I'm one of the HCS commentators, and this is another HCS Weekly Report, where today we're going to be talking about Sentinels. Going on to our road to Orlando, we've covered multiple of the top teams, including, the likes of Optic, Cloud9, United, and then some. And I think it's only right that we cover the previous LAN champions in Kansas City, and we're going to talk about Sentinels both individually and their teams and how they look currently, and in both in tournament play and scrims, and what we expect for them going into Orlando as well. If you guys like this kind of content, leave a comment down below, and also let me know what kind of videos you guys want to see leading into Orlando and beyond with these HCS weekly reports. So first up, we're going to talk about the man Frosty. Frosty has been a phenomenal player, a dominant player for quite some time, even going back to Halo 5 and even before then. He's always been super talented, always had an amazing IQ, seemingly being one step ahead of his opponents at all times. And more recently, he's come into his own as an IGL, as a leader as well. So joining Snakebite as they co-IGL the team, which has really helped and led to Sentinels' success. Always been a fan of Frosty. I even had him as my #1 player in the game for quite some time. And if they win Orlando, he might propel himself back to that spot as well. Next up is going to be Lethal. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. Lethal started off a little bit rough going into Halo Infinite. It was very clear he wasn't a fan of the game right away. Always been a fan of this young man. I've always known him as a winner. However, recently, he stepped up his game, and every time we have him on screen, he's making plays that go beyond the stat sheet. I think back to a few times where he's holding the oddball. They're in a 4v4 situation, and he just knows when to perfectly drop the ball, puts down damage onto multiple players, or gets himself a cleanup kill, goes right back into grabbing that ball and rotate it to the perfect spot away from the spawners on the opposing team. Lethal has been making game-winning plays recently, and even his stats are starting to reflect that as well, as they've been getting better and better. But for me, when it comes to Lethal, it's really about the plays that he makes outside of the stat sheet that really help. Every team needs that player to do the dirty work, and Lethal is never afraid to do it. Next up, we're going to talk about Royal 2, and it's just another player that's been stepping up his game recently. Royal 2 has always been known as a slayer, and I think it's West Clutch. West Clutch that had said that when it comes to point and click, there's probably no better than Royal 2. The man seemingly doesn't miss and is always winning his individual gunfights. When you have a player like Royal 2 who's anchoring your offense and even your defense as well, it's so tough for you to feel comfortable, and it allows the rest of the team to really play freely when you have a player like Royal 2 that can drop a double or triple at any given moment. Royal 2 has really put himself back into the top 5 in the game category or conversation again, and I will say, depending on his depending on his success in Orlando, I think we should really start talking about Royal 2 in the top 5 in the game right now, and maybe in the top 3, because the man is a nuisance, and it's really tough to deal with him on Sentinels. And finally, we're going to talk about Snakebite, the general, the chess master, always putting in high damage, plays really fast, knows when to IGL, but also knows when to do it when he's in the front lines. Like, it's usually when you have an IGL, they're kind of baiting their teammates, sitting towards the back, kind of manning the troops. Snakebite's in the trenches and still being a leader, leading by example, and it's always fun to watch him play. Snakebite has quickly become underrated, which is crazy because you think about one of the best to ever do it, and we're not putting enough respect on Snakebite's name, and I think we have to start doing it. Obviously, you have Royal 1 as their coach. I'm sure that reflects here somewhere, but there we go. Royal 1 as the coach, and then the team manager is Dynashawn, who's, by the way, a phenomenal video editor. And dude, Dynashawn is incredible. If you've seen some of his work with Paradise Halo and Sentinels, man, he's the real deal. But that makes up your Sentinels roster, and like I kind of always talk about, you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. So I want to talk about their tournament results going into Halo Infinite. So going into Halo Infinite, we had big expectations for Sentinels. You know, this was it was almost a situation where Sentinels were in a grand finals or bust right off the rip. And I don't even know if that's even fair to them, but that's really kind of where we put them, because we're talking about the dynasty. We're talking about, you know, in Halo 5, look at all, you know, Halo 3, Halo 2 anniversary, look at all of that gold. I mean, we're talking about one of the best teams, if not the best team in Halo's history. You know, when you have that, when you have any team that's in the conversation of, you know, the you know, final boss, you know, expectations are going to be high, especially when going into a new game when viewership was at an absolute max. Starting off the open series in third place, not bad, but again, like we said, not the expectations we were looking for when talking about Sentinels. I don't know what the hell happened here. I'm going to skip over that because God bless, I don't know what happened there. But going to the rest, we got a big first place at the at Raleigh event. Esports Arena held a $25,000 event where they were able to get the first place finish on that right before Raleigh, just about a week before Raleigh, by the way, where they finished in fourth place. And you're going to notice something big with the roster, and that's that Formal was on there in place of World 2. Going into Raleigh, there was a scandal. And I think it's kind of not talked about as much now, but, you know, Router 2 was caught doing a bit of geofiltering where he's at in Canada. They have the absolute worst service. He was having a terrible situation when it comes to the ping and connecting to the server. So he decided to go outside of the rules and do a bit of geofiltering. And I'll be honest, I don't know the whole ins and outs. So I'm not going to give you too much, but either way, there was tampering that was done, and World 2 is ineligible to play for a bit of time, and that includes at the first major LAN, which was Raleigh. Formal comes in, and this was actually really good for Formal because Formal got the chance to show that he still got it. Let me tell you, my man definitely still got it. In fact, we're gonna just hone in on Raleigh just a little bit, because not only did he prove that he still got it, but as we take a look at the bracket here, Sentinels were able to make it. So I said I ended up getting 3-0'd by Optic in the winners bracket. Then the elimination, Then in the elimination bracket, what am I looking for here? That's what I'm looking for. Not only the Sentinels get their revenge, but did it in a game 5 against Optic, which was where Formal was signed to as a content creator then, because he was coming over from Call of Duty, not quite on the team just yet. So Formal comes in and 3-2's the very team that he is signed by. That's pretty crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, we can't ignore it. World 2 didn't show up at the first event, and it might have hindered the path that Sentinels were on for quite a bit. Still playing with Formal, we got a top 4, then into a top 8 finish. Again, when we talk about Sentinels, you know, we usually talk about grand finals or bust, maybe third place or bust, and obviously fourth and top 8 is not what we were looking for. The final event before Anaheim, final event with Formal playing, by the way, they were able to get second place, and that was huge. That was huge. That was the Pro Series, and that showed us, okay, Sentinels are coming back to form. And in Anaheim, they bring back World 2. Get a top 4 finish. The first event, the first LAN, I should say, that World 2 was competing on. So we gave them a little bit of a pass there. You know, again, we want to see grand finals. We want to see third place, but nobody's going to be complaining about fourth. Maybe they might have complained a little bit because they weren't happy. But as far as, like, I'm sure us as competitive fans, we're not going to kill them over a fourth place finish when they've just implemented World 2 back into the starting lineup going into LAN. Going into that Nissan FaZe Clan Halo Invitational, remember that was a $50,000 event that got increased to $75,000. Sentinels finishing out third. Kansas City is where things ran hot. I want to hone in on Kansas City real quick because there were some things that Quadrant and now SSG, but then PK, they played them tight. Like, for example, like early on, Quadrant took Sentinels to game 5. Let's not forget that. Back in pool play, The Pittsburgh Knights did the same thing to Sentinels. Sentinels had to clutch up in both of those rounds in order to make it out, but then afterwards they caught fire. They really did. Sentinels ended up 3-1 in Cloud9. Back then, back-to-back LAN champions, the dominant Cloud9. That was a huge win. Going into the winners finals, even able to take Optic to a game 5 and guarantee their spot into the grand final. Sentinels again still running hot, already guaranteed the top 2 placing. Now all they have to do is win one more series and they'll become your champions. Cloud9 off of back-to-back sweeps, both on eUnited and Optic. We knew how strong eUnited were back when Spartan was on that roster, by the way. We knew how strong Optic was. This was the first time that I believe they implemented formal, to my knowledge, on LAN as far as in the Optic uniform. And we're talking about 3-0s and 3-0s. Cloud9 were hot. Cloud9 were looking like the very team that went back-to-back on LAN. And Cloud9 were looking like they were going to get their revenge on Sentinels. And then in that grand finals, Sentinels send them home a little bit early, made them move their flight a little bit. That was a sweep, and not just a best of 5 sweep, but a best of 7 sweep. Back to back to back to back wins for Sentinels over Cloud9 as they look like their dominant form once again. Right after Kansas City, we're seeing that Sentinels seemingly not having the same success on LAN. You know, when playing online, a top 6 finish in a Pro Series, not what you want to see out of Sentinels. Even going to the North American Super, where they were the favorites. Sadly, Sentinels ran well, but then ran into an even better G1 roster. The way G1 were playing during the North American Super, I'm not sure anybody could have beaten them outside of Optic. To beat this roster, you needed a juggernaut. At least someone, and Optic Gaming were playing like juggernauts during the North American Super, and sadly Sentinels weren't. Again, it's online and LAN. It's a little bit of a different story when it comes to Sentinels. We judge them based on their LAN performances, and I will say since then, they had a matchup with Sentinels had a matchup with G1 during the Louis V Titan Money Tuesday events, where it was a one best of 7 series for $1,000 on the line right there, winner takes all situation, and Sentinels were able to beat them out in a game 7. And they've been looking well ever since then. I think even matching up against G1 in scrims, we're going to talk about that a little bit actually. But I mean, they got swept by G1. We're not going to forget about that. So since then in scrims, Sentinels able to get the 6-2 win on native. I don't think we're surprised there. Cloud9 though, 8-3 Sentinels, and this was just a few days ago. I think that's a big win for Cloud9. That's a big win. Sentinels 12-4 over FaZe. I think that's a huge win for Sentinels. FaZe have been really figuring it out, and FaZe have looked dangerous as of recently. So the fact that you're able to 3x them in the scoreline, I think is huge. Sentinels getting the win. G1 again playing them tight, but Sentinels beating them out in scrim. Same with Complexity. They did lose out to FaZe by 1 about 2 weeks ago. And again, Optic are the most dominant team when it comes to those online scrims, and they got dominated by Optic Gaming. But what we're seeing, I would say, besides this Cloud9 performance, I would say we're not surprised right now. Sentinels getting into final form, leading into Orlando, and I would say that I have Sentinels my favorites to make it to the grand finals. I still think Optic have done enough to be the favorites going into this tournament, but I think Sentinels are the favorites going into the grand finals. I think they look good against Cloud9. I think they look good against FaZe consistently, but again, Cloud9 besides the scrim consistently look good against Cloud9, consistently look good against FaZe. And even though eUnited have been playing really well, I think Sentinels just do what eUnited do just a little bit better because they have similar play styles. I have Sentinels as my favorites to make it to the grand finals. And when it comes to LAN, though, maybe they step it up a notch and maybe they get the win over Optic. Guys, that was your HCS Weekly Report. Today we were talking about Sentinels. Tomorrow we'll be talking about probably another top team. It's always fun to watch this. If you guys haven't caught up yet, go and check these videos down below. We've talked about Optic, Cloud9, United, and much more. Not only where they are and what their expectations are going into Orlando, but on top of that, we've talked about where they've been since, talk about that Raleigh and Anaheim performances, because there's usually trends that you can follow. And as of right now, we know the Sentinels trend is going upwards. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one. Peace out.